friends, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another Let's Talk Autism. I first want to say thank you so much for all of the comments last week on my first autism video. I really appreciate it. It meant a lot to me. It was actually one of the top most viewed videos that I've put out since I started my channel. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you watching and taking the time to listen. It's a hard subject for me to talk about, especially on a personal level, but I really want to share more. So I am back today and I'm going to kind of pick up where I left off last week. Last week, if you were able to watch, and if you did not see the first one, I will link it below as well. I wanted to just give an introduction to our story and how we ended up getting Michael early intervention services. So I'm pretty sure I left off right about when we started the intervention services, and I started to talk about our early intervention therapist that came to our home. I don't know if I should share her name. I'm not going to share her last name. Her first name is Wendy, and she was wonderful. I think I did say that last week. Wendy had many years of experience. She was a teacher, a special needs teacher. She worked in the public school system and in the private system. So she was very well educated, very experienced in her therapy. And she really walked us through the entire process from the day she arrived until we left, and I'm happy to say we still keep in touch with her, and it's probably one of the best friendships or relationships that came out of this whole thing since it started. So Wendy came to our home every Sunday for 2 hours. She would spend 1 hour with Michael and 1 hour with Alex. And I know if you are watching and this is new to you, maybe you're not familiar with early intervention. So I wrote some notes because I wanted to be able to explain it correctly, not just jibber jabber like I always do. But anyway, so early, if you see me looking down, that's what I'm looking at, my notes. So early intervention services are provided by your state, and it varies. It's different for each state as far as what it covers and the availability. I will say that not every state, the services takes you a long time for evaluation to get it going. So I know there's a lot of issues with early intervention across the United States. But here in New Jersey, we did have to wait, but it was not as long as I've heard from other autism moms in other states. So early intervention helps children gain basic skills that they learn in the first 2 years of life. And Michael and Alex were at 20 months, I believe we started them. So Alex was a little bit behind, nowhere near, I don't even want to say he was behind. He just needed a little additional help. Michael was not, it was nowhere near Alex at that point. So it is physical skills. It could be communication skills, definitely, thinking skills. All of those things are incorporated in the early intervention service. The very first time Wendy came, Michael at that point was having tantrum after tantrums. It was a continual battle. I'd hate to say battle, but he was always having tantrums. Really, that's all I could say. Is it was a lot. It was a lot to figure out why. And she, from the first time, you know, she walked in, she was ready to go. Michael was still sitting in a, oh my God, what do you call those things? Like a high chair, but a booster seat. We didn't have high chairs. We used the booster seats and we attached them to our dining room table. So Michael was still sitting in that. So we would place him in that and she would sit in front of him. And the very first session, he cried the entire hour. Did not want to work with her. No eye contact, which was one of the, you know, early signs that I kind of knew Michael had autism, but he cried the entire time. And he also was looking back at me, my husband, I guess, trying to understand what this woman was trying to do with him. And it came to a point where I would have to go and stand in the hallway while she was here because it was too much of a distraction. And so that's what we did, mostly me. I stood in the hallway, and I have to say those first few weeks of sessions was very stressful for me because you know, you're standing in the hallway, you're listening to your child crying consistently for the entire hour without being able to, you know, comfort them. And trusting, and you know, we didn't know Wendy, we didn't know what early intervention was, we didn't know anything. We were putting everything, our trust into her. And she told us that in her experience, sometimes it took months for kids to finally open up to her or be more receptive to the therapy. And she said she has the patience and she can handle it, and she'll stay and work with him and get him, you know, get him to work with her as long as she has to. And she really did have patience, much more than I had standing in the hallway listening to him. It was very hard for me. And you know, at that point, like I said, it was the first few, I would say probably the first month until she was able to get him to finally start working with him. And I'll get more into what the actual therapy was, but I can say that you hope that you get a therapist that is as wonderful as Wendy, because I've heard some nightmare stories, I'm not gonna lie, but I hope, you know, when you start this process, you want someone that's a little, you know, has a little, you know, compassion and is knowledgeable and patient with you and your child, and Wendy was definitely that. Alex also sat in his booster seat, and he worked with her just fine. He wanted to. He loved doing the puzzles and colors and matching, and he was much more in a better place than Michael was. You know, there was an hour of crying. Alex sat down and was ready to go with her. So his adjustment period for her coming over was like a play session, and it really was. At that point, they were 20 months old. I mean, they weren't going to be doing, you know, learning how to write or anything like that. So for Alex, it was fun. For Michael, it was a little, you know, tough. But he did get to the point where he was accepting to her and, you know, did work with her. And, you know, as much as he could at that age range. But I think I mentioned last week, about a month into her being with us, she asked if we could, or if we would mind if she brought in a behaviorist. to work with Michael or to evaluate him. And to be honest with you, at that point, I didn't know what that was. And I just thought it was another kind of therapy. And I was, me and my husband were like, yes, of course you could bring him. And he came and he sat with Michael. And I don't remember him giving too much of a hard time with him. But he did try to do a few different exercises with him. And at the end of it, he just sat down with me and my husband and suggested that based on what he saw, working with Michael, that we should probably take him to go see a neurologist and have him evaluated. I didn't know much about why we would take him to a neurologist. Obviously it's a brain, something to do with the brain. So he warned us that it would take months, maybe a year, to get an appointment, that a lot of parents have a hard time because there's so many children waiting to see a neurologist, that it would take us a while. I don't even know how we found our first neurologist, but we were able to get an appointment rather quickly. And probably about a month later. I want to be nice about it, but she was not the best neurologist. I'm not gonna say that she wasn't a good doctor. I don't even want to say that. I want to say more about it. More was her personality. She didn't have any compassion. She wasn't empathetic. She wasn't patient. She wasn't kind. And even the very first time we met her, I just was not impressed. But she kind of, tried to interact with him. She asked us a lot of questions. We were there for probably about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And she examined him briefly. Nothing, she wanted to see him walk, and he was walking, at that point. And what his likes and dislikes were, what habits he had, things like that. So, very nonchalant, she blurted out, okay, yeah, Michael has autism, and blah, 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 is what I heard after that, because all I heard was autism. And as I said last week, I kind of felt that in my heart. I knew that that's where we were going with this, but when she said it, it was just way too much. I don't even know what she said after that. And, took me a while to get back to the office. My mind was somewhere else, into the conversation that she was having, because then as I realized I needed to find out what I needed to do, what we needed to do for Michael next. And she had a list of things. We would have to she wanted us to do genetic testing for autism ID. She wanted us to take him for a hearing test. We also went for something else. Did I write it down, what we did? No. Okay. I know there was something else, but I'm going to have to think about what it is. So she had a list of things for us to do. She gave us a prescription with the diagnosis of autism and what kind of therapy he would need. This was definitely so new for me and my husband. I didn't even know that a prescription or a diagnosis of autism was needed for therapy. We already had early intervention, so I wasn't really sure what else, I did not really know anything about it. So she gave us the prescription, and on it, it said I'm going to say like an hour, 2 hours of ABA therapy, an hour of occupational therapy, and an hour of speech therapy. And yeah, that was it. So she told us, you need to get that started right away. And, do this, do that, take him here, take him there. This is when all the doctor's appointments and the running around, and when you start to really lose your mind. So when we left that office, I cried the entire way home. My dad was here waiting, my aunt, helping with Alex. And yeah, I was just not in a good place. And I mean, I don't know. I know there's a lot of different ways people handle things, but as I said last week, my mom had just passed away a month or two before that. I was still grieving. I was still depressed. This really put me close to the edge, if I wasn't already over the edge at that point. But so we came home, and I got in touch with Wendy, and I told her. And the thing about early intervention, the therapist, they're so experienced. They already knew Michael was, had autism. The behaviors that was here, he knew. Of course, he never could say that. He would never. I believe we asked him, do you think has autism? And they both would answer, we don't know, we're not doctors, something to that fact. But they knew. And, I always say that Wendy and the behaviorists that came to our house probably were the biggest help in the beginning, because they did really walk us through everything. And we started all the therapies except speech. We did not start speech right away. I think we waited a few months. It took us a while to understand what ABA was, how it worked, and how Michael would learn this at that age. So it's definitely a process. And I would say, try to learn as much. If your child is newly diagnosed, try to learn as much about ABA. There are so many different kinds of therapy. Not everybody is open to ABA. Some prefer something called the Denver model, which is more floor work. And what I mean by floor work is really more play-based. The therapist getting on the floor and doing different things with the children, rather than skills that are more like, I'm trying to, matching or shapes or basic basic things that you would need at that age. So I would have to say, when she started the ABA therapy, the behaviorist that came to see Michael was the one who created all the programs. And it was a binder, like thick binder of all the things. And they went over everything, what it was, the program that they were going to do, what they wanted him to be able to accomplish and master, and then move on to a new program. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about that next week. I just wanted to give you an update as to where we were near the diagnosis. Now, the other thing that the neurologist prescribed was OT, which is occupational therapy. That in itself was a whole other new world. I thought occupational therapist, and I immediately thought it was physical therapy. I thought it was, helping him to learn to walk on his feet, not on his toes, things like that. That's what my, immediate thought was. I was totally wrong. I wasn't totally wrong, but it was not what the OT therapist was going to be doing. The very first OT therapist we had at our home, I don't know, she was very young. I don't know if she was just done with her education, but was not helpful, did not explain things, did not, just was not helpful. And the very first thing she did was tell us, I'm going to make a sensory diet for Michael, and you'll need to follow this every hour of the day. And I was like, what is a sensory diet? I really honestly thought it was like food related, because I've never heard of anybody having any kind of sensory issues. That was new, totally new. I did not know what she was talking about. And the following week when she came and she wanted to show us some of the things to do, I thought that this lady was out of her mind. She came with a brush, just like a white handheld brush. And she asked me for some throw blankets that were large enough to wrap Michael in, which, we had on hand. And she proceeded to show me that she was going to use the brush on his arms, arm to arm, how to brush him, his legs, his back. And I remember thinking, is she okay? Because it really shows you, if you don't have any knowledge of this stuff, how would you know? I didn't realize what the brushing was for. I didn't realize that it was a sensory input that he needed. And again, we'll do more about OT and in a future talk. But this was basically what she said. The blanket, she showed me how to take Michael, roll him up like a burrito, and keep him there for a few minutes, because that kind of sensory, and I'm using my sweater as cocooned him, would give him the sensory input that he needed from that. I honestly had no idea what she was talking about. I really had to look into it and find out more, ask around, ask Wendy, thank God, knew more about it. She also used the brushing during her early intervention sessions and showed me and my husband how we would do it. I found it to be the most annoying thing ever. I didn't find him to be receptive of it, and he never was. He never. That brush went out the door rather quickly, I can say. But, I wanted to do whatever it is they told me and my husband were doing. And so really, that's what we did. I mean, she came the next week with her, an extra brush, and she had some other things too, but I can't remember right now, but that was the one thing that stood out to me. And a paper, and how many times a day to do the brushing, how many times to do the rolling, the other things, and then to mark it off, and then she would check it next week. It was like you had homework. And that's what we did. But I was not feeling her, and I couldn't connect to her. And if I can't connect to her, I wasn't expecting Michael to. So I called the agency, and we got a new OT therapist. And just like Wendy, she was wonderful. And I'll talk more about the OT therapist next week. But I think this is where I'm going to end it for today. I'm trying to keep these at, a half hour long. Not everybody is interested in learning about autism, or, it's just not going to be a subject matter for everyone. If you are here, usually for my Disney recipes or my cooking, baking recipes, I appreciate it if you are over here watching this, because, autism is a huge part of our life and my son's. And the more people that know and learn about autism, the special needs community, we need, we need support. And if you all are willing to, stick around and listen to me talk for about a half hour, every couple weeks, I think I'm going to do it every couple weeks, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. The special needs community thanks you. Believe me, I have many special needs moms that are following me. And if you read their comments below, please feel free to respond to them as well, because we often feel very isolated, and it would really mean a lot to me if you would reach out to them as well, and you'll know who they are just by their comments. Anyway, guys, I really appreciate it. Again, if you are new here, I welcome you. I really should have said this in the beginning. My name is Joann. I have twin boys. They're 9, soon to be 10 in a couple months. Michael has autism, is nonverbal, and I am sharing a little bit about our story with you. So please consider subscribing. It would help me out a great deal. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Hit the bell so you know when I post my next video. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.